Hello and welcome to another album analysis. In today's video we're taking a look at the third studio album by the British rock/metal collective Sleep Token, titled Take Me Back to Eden. Yes, the day is finally here to finally get our hands on the end of the conceptual trilogy that the band have been working on over the past number of years, starting off with Sundowning before moving into This Place Will Become Your Tomb, and now we do have the epic grand finale to the story and the lore that the band have been building over recent years. And the hype hasn't stopped building since the beginning of the year when they first started releasing tracks from this album. They certainly brought on waves of new fans with the very expansive styles that the band were incorporating into their music. Although they've done it on the past two albums, this one certainly seemed to show their ability to really push the boundaries of rock and metal, really show that they can incorporate different styles and do it so very well. And the real question is, will this album be worth the hype that has been building over the past number of months? Will the album be as glorious as the Garden of Eden or as dismal as the Depths of Despair? Let's take a look at it track by track. Opening the album we do have Chokehold, which does serve as the perfect intro to this album. It really highlights the interaction between Vessel and Sleep through a variety of different lyrics, but one thing that we are going to see throughout this album that we have seen on previous releases as well is the heavy amount of ambiguity, because it could also be a discussion between Vessel and somebody in his personal life, potentially a lover, because this album is going to put a heavy emphasis on things such as mental health and things like that, so you can really draw different things from every single track that this band seem to release. A couple of instrumental effects I really do like as well, the sharp winding guitars that really imitate this idea of being choked, like you can't take air into your lungs. And also with a chokehold it can be very intimate, but it can also be very aggressive, so again you've got ambiguity just in the styling on the lyrics and the ideas that it's trying to convey. And this song certainly acts like a journey to atonement, this idea of looking for guidance, so really kind of sets the scene for what the album is going to explore. And in the same vein, it also doesn't kind of go too far on the musical end either. It kind of sits in this nice middle ground, really getting people a nice introduction to the band for certainly people that are just coming on board, and certainly for fans of old, it gives them just a taste of things that they've heard from the band before. Then we move into the Summoning, which I love plenty of the lyrics in this album, and certainly on this track as well. There's plenty of religious tie-ins that we do see. I've got a river running right into you, I've got a blood trail red in the blue. So I feel this touches on the idea of the River Nile being turned to blood, almost like the plagues, how the deities plagued the people of Egypt. So it really shows through a lot of the lyrics these ideas of how deities can impact the world, and it has quite a dark tone as well to it. And it certainly talks about these ideas of holy powers being brought in. And we can start to see on this track as well, Vessel really begin to stretch his vocal range, really play and hit those heavier notes. Not the heaviest note we will see on the album, but really start to show again his ability to really dance between styles, between softer and heavier vocals. We also do get the heavier, thick drums and guitars that really add to this powerful melody that metal fans will absolutely love, and they certainly did upon this track's release. And we also still get this ambiguity being brought in as well between personal relationships and religion. The two are certainly kind of fighting for control, really kind of being, both can be drawn from the track because of these simple heavy chugging moments and these beautiful instrumental interludes. We do get just a real interesting mix that caught many people off guard, as it does drop into this funk style bridge and then moves out into the rest of the track. And I love how we've also got other lyrics that show this as well, the idea of this religion tie-in. You've got my body, flesh and bones, almost like the idea of Jesus giving himself to the people, so almost like this idea of really Vessel is giving himself to Sleep. He's kind of letting himself be completely absorbed by this deity, or certainly by somebody. And we can also look at the idea of the summoning, the title itself, how it could be this idea of really just raising a deity up, kind of bringing them to life almost. And musically, this track really does end up being quite a roller coaster, as many of the songs on this album will actually do, taking you from pillar to post and really showing the versatility of the band. And it is one thing that may catch sort of people off. A lot of people that are just kind of stuck to this idea of one genre may struggle a little bit with this album because of the sheer versatility and the difference in styles that we do see all throughout it. Next in line we do have Granite, a song that touches on toxicity, and it shows it through some very strong lyrics. Sulfur on your breath, these really fantastic metaphoric lyrics that are really very well crafted by Vessel, really do show some really strong ideas, and I love this track because of that reason. The idea of second-hand smoke and glass on the street, it's the idea of smoke and mirrors. There's lots of things really beautifully carved into the lyrics of this track, and you could pull it apart line by line, and it has this really interesting swingful delivery, almost got this sense of agitation but isn't overly aggressive, but then all of a sudden we get this switch into these heavier tones, really reaching this boiling point where it's more potent. You get the layers building up and really just kind of get this more aggressive in your face style towards the later stages of the track, and it just, you can easily see the idea how it's about staying in a dead relationship. We'd rather be 6 feet under than alone, so it really touches very easily with some of the lyrics on the actual message that is trying to be conveyed, and it's something that we will see repeated throughout the album as well. In at track number 4 we do have Aqua Regia, which for those of you that aren't aware is a mixture of concentrated nitric and hydrochloric acids capable of melting gold, and that's something we really see it focus on throughout this track, almost like Vessel has put himself on a pedestal. He sees himself as this golden figure, and it again touches on more interesting stylings of relationship with these subatomic interactions, almost like you're trying to get involved with somebody. And it could also touch on the idea of modern day interactions, the idea of dating apps and things like that, because we get a lot of focus around circuit boards and these digital interactions that are really brought in, with Vessel comparing himself to God. These days I'm a circuit board, and a variety of other strong lyrics that really show that idea. And I also love the use of the comparatives in this track. Cold love, hot blood, really mixing things up. They love to look at both ends of the spectrum, and they really love to smash things together that traditionally wouldn't fit, including the musical stylings on the album. And it also really has this really strong piano driven interlude that kind of sets in this idea of a ballroom, this silicon ballroom that is talked about, leading into this gorgeous bridge that I just love how the vocal delivery towards the end stages of this track, it really shows the beauty of Vessel's voice, and just really how they set the scene in many of the tracks, including this one, to really kind of put you in that moment, to really envelop you in the sound, is something that many bands struggle to do, but certainly for Sleep Token they do it so very well, especially on Aqua Regia. For track 5 we are wholly consumed by Vore, which was probably undoubtedly the heaviest track on the album, with these guttural, visceral sounds that really highlighted the idea of being consumed, such as gluttony, and it kind of felt like it touched on the idea of obsession, this idea of being fully enveloped by somebody, just because there's always something in the way that stops you from having maybe this person in your life. You're obsessed with them, you want to reach out and grab them, but there is something blocking you. So this is certainly a track that when it was released, many people were like, whoa, this is like the far extreme that we do see on this album. This is the heaviest thing that we really did see. Many people thought the Summoning would probably be the furthest they would go, but they really did prove us wrong. And it's an interesting mix coming straight after Aqua Regia, which is much more R&B based, to really show these different styles. But one thing the band do, and it's certainly noticeable at the end of this track, is they tailor off into this kind of softer outro, rather than going from these guttural screams into a different track and really having this jarring disposition. They really aid themselves just by tapering it off towards the end of the song. And it's also another track that really highlights the band's ability to craft strong lyrics, this idea of being consumed whole and being swallowed. Lots of great lyrics that really again show this idea that the song is trying to explore about being in the mouth of gods. And we do see these constant references to different songs in their discography, or different ties to different elements that are really understandable and really make sense. So certainly they're appealing to new fans by making songs accessible, but also appealing to older fans by really tying in these lyrics from previous releases that if you can listen strong enough, you can really pick up and you think, wow, that's a great reference back to a previous release. Then we do move into Ascensionism, which I was definitely really curious to see what was going to be the track that followed on from Vore, and it has this really soft piano open into these much more R&B stylings, and like I said, with the outro of Vore having that soft kind of dip into a softer sound, it really worked heading into this song, which I feel really talks about the idea of a broken person, half of a rhythm or deity, so really touches on this idea of being half, almost like Vessel can complete this person, while the other eye following a scarlet trail and the last few drops from the Holy Grail, which again show more references to past tracks. And one thing I love, there's probably my favourite moment on the album comes in this track. It's actually during the breakdown when you have the line, "You're gonna watch me ascend," and they really build the levels all around Vessel, and it has this moment where you can feel exactly what the song is describing. You can feel this ascension really being brought in as these levels are raised. It almost has this harmonic kind of feel to it that really show this idea of this ascension. It's a beautiful moment on the album, and one that really, just the first time I heard it, my kind of jaw dropped, and I was like, that is the perfect moment for a band to be able to perfectly encapsulate exactly what they're trying to and just do it so flawlessly is very, very impressive. It's also still as well full of plenty of twists and turns, because it moves into something darker before returning to a soft sound before ending on this huge build. It's really another song that really takes you on this roller coaster, and at times it can be a little bit too much when you're kind of being up and down and up and down. You've really got to follow along with the album, and again, it's another track where really for people that want to stick to one particular sound or style, this track can take you all places. It certainly is an album that requires you to be very open to different stylings, sounds and genres, but it's another track that really shows their ability to move between styles within a single song. Then at track 7 we do have what is probably the most beautiful track and the most emotive track on this album, Are You Really Okay? Has this really nice acoustic soft open, and it's a song that really seems to talk about this idea of wanting to protect somebody from self-harm, watching somebody tear themselves apart in front of your own eyes and someone you very much care about, with lyrics such as you woke me up one night dripping crimson on the carpet. And it feels like a progressive track because it's almost like there's a story developing where the wounds get deeper and more difficult to actually fix, and really kind of help this person from kind of destroying themselves and tearing themselves apart. And also it's another strong build that really adds power to the track towards the end, as we see this development, this almost begging nature coming from Vessel to really show this idea of I don't want you to go. And there's little notes and little things in the track that really show this idea of closeness, his emotive vocals, but also this idea of kind of sharing a bed and things like that. So you know from the lyrics that it's kind of someone that Vessel really cares about. So, and it's again touching on that idea of mental health when people are struggling and they resort to doing things that can be quite destructive to themselves, and really shows that idea, but shows it from another perspective, from somebody that's watching this unfold in front of their eyes, rather than kind of putting the focus on himself being the person that's going through that. Appearing at track 8 we do have The Apparition, which is a song all about dreaming about a deity or a person. Again, that ambiguity is being brought in. This idea of that somebody's there but then they're not when you're awake, but I know that you will disappear just as I awake. And we have got more of these R&B style elements that have been brought in throughout a variety of tracks, and it can touch on the idea of getting over a past lover. Don't wait because this could be the last time. So it's almost like it's this idea of letting somebody go. You kind of hold them in your memories, in your dreams, and at one point you decide to eventually cut them off. And I love this idea of just let me go or take me with you, this idea of commitment, because if you're looking at it from this perspective of a deity and his relationship to Vessel, it's this idea of he keeps appearing in his dreams, keeps taunting him almost, and Vessel wants him to commit to either let him go or take me with you. And we see some really interesting lyrics that really help to reflect that. And one thing I really do love about the final refrain on this track is it has a very similar effect to The Noose by A Perfect Circle, where you've got these vocals that are just layered under the instruments, and they really just add this eeriness, this creepiness to the build, and almost like you're in this dreamlike state that's really, really interesting. And you can really see the emotive style that comes through because of that, just this haunting sound that is brought through that really just shows a very strong ending to the track. Next up we do have Do You Wish That You Loved Me, probably the most radio-friendly track on this album with its very bouncy vibe, and for new fans this was certainly something that caught them very much off guard, even though it's something that explored on their previous albums with this sound, even though again only over one track. And it's a track that seems to be about wanting to love somebody who can't be loved, whether it's to love yourself or somebody can't love you because you've become this toxic, aggressive person. And Vessel talks about it from the first person perspective, and we see it evolve as the track goes on. In the opening you feel like it's about kind of he's got this partner who can't love him anymore because of who he's become, but then we get this reflectiveness coming in, and my reflection just won't smile back at me like I know it should. So you can see this idea of looking in a mirror, reflecting on your decisions. There's lots of questions and indecision really being brought into this track, which kind of really weird because it mixes very interestingly with this bouncy vibe we've got being put in the background that kind of almost should invoke feelings of joy, but really the track is much more soft solemn than the music would suggest, but the lyrics really help to carry it through that idea and really show this development, this questioning attitude, and really show kind of Vessel going through the notions of questioning his motives, his ideas, really just reflecting on life as a whole. Pouring in next, we do have Rain with some really interesting lyrics that are featured on this. I have waited so long that I almost became just a stoic statue, which is a reference to Mine, one of the tracks from their previous albums. And they tell us about this idea of kind of being hooked by somebody, letting them rain down on you, let them kind of control you almost. And I love the way that we have two very different types of delivery in the lyrics on this track, really just kind of showing this sharp, biting delivery throughout a couple of the verses and having this much softer sound through other parts of the track. And the reason I love this is because of some of the lyrics we do have, such as the mouth of the wolf, the eyes of the lamb. So again, these comparisons, but the mouth of the wolf is this sharp, aggressive tone, and the eyes of the lamb is this kind of much softer appearance that you kind of give to somebody. So it could be this idea of wolf in sheep's clothing. So kind of this idea of duality that's really shown through these two vocal styles, which I absolutely love. I think it's really good. This idea of I'm coiled up like the venomous serpent. So almost like you're coiled up ready to strike. You may seem like you're just kind of quite innocent, but you can be quite aggressive. So it really again touches on the different ways that people can be, and they can have those two sides inside them fighting against one another on how they are kind of shown to somebody else. So again, there's a lot of reflectiveness on this track that's really shown through some very clever lyrics that are really emphasized by the musical choices as well. Heading towards the end of the album, we do have Take Me Back to Eden, the album's title track, and more beautiful lyrics on this. I dream in phosphorescence, which is kind of like something that emits light without having a reason to, without requiring combustion or things like that. But I love how it's just so simple. Rather than I dream in light, just throw these expansive words in that really help to give it this much more descriptive, more encrypted feel that I think is just makes the strong songwriting just that bit stronger. Other lyrics such as I'm a wind insect, you're a funeral pyre, a play on like a moth to flame. So really making these traditional sounding phrases, putting a twist on them and really adding a bit more depth to them, which I really do love. And it's another track that really is very introspective. Is this idea of almost like Vessel is damaged. He wants to be taken back to Eden. He wants to shed this darkness that has enveloped him. And we really do see this quick delivery in the verses that almost shows this growing impatience. I need you to see me for what I have become. So this self-acceptance that you've become something dark, you've become the wolf instead of the lamb. So really shows lots of clever lyrics to show this development as we do head towards the later stages of the album. And it really touches on some other ideas that I really do like, that we've no idea what we've got until we lose it. So it's once you lose something, that's when you start to maybe realize you need that cut-off point or that really big event to happen before you can finally kind of have that inner reflection. So it has showed this development across the course of the three albums with the law and how things have developed, the relationship between sleep and between Vessel, or between Vessel and kind of people in his personal life. We do also have in the final chorus these ties back to Chokehold, almost like the album is going full cycle back to the start, really kind of going through this journey and taking us back to that beginning point. And we do also have this very heavy close, almost like sleep has appeared before Vessel. It's kind of this point where he's begging to go back to Eden. He wants to see this re-emergence of his deity, and it finally happens right at the end of the track. And rounding out the album, we do have Euclid, a track that has this very piano-driven closer. It's almost like this one last ride on the sunset skyline, and it's just this journey back to Eden, I do feel like. Although Take Me Back to Eden felt like the perfect closer, this feels like a eulogy to the actual three albums, to the end of this story that has really happened, like this journey that we've been taken through, because this is littered with references to previous tracks, and the outro actually kind of ties back to the beginning of Sundowning, so it does feel like this final anecdote to really close out the story as a whole before the band move on to their next one, whatever direction that may be. And I kind of like that they have this softer close. As much as I really like the heavy close with this almost like this appearance of sleep, this closure to the story, this big boss fight at the end almost, I do like they've added this on to the end, just so we're not ending on that kind of cliffhanger ending of what happens next. We do get this appearance of sleep, and then we do get this soft closer that just kind of reflects and touches on on the actual band's discography, again a bit like Vessel, reflecting introspectively over the course of this album, really looking at himself as a person and questioning his attitude towards people, towards his deity, towards sleep, towards a variety of different things. So really just kind of just bundles everything up really nicely, puts a bow on the top and polishes the album off with a perfect ending. Overall, this really is a phenomenal album. It's definitely worth all the hype that it has been given. However, if you are somebody that kind of just likes one solid genre like metal, then you're maybe not going to enjoy it as much as someone that's a bit more genre fluid like the band. But if you're kind of someone that's quite open to these new ideas, these new boundaries that the band have created, you are in for a beautiful ride. I mean, plenty of the actual songwriting is incredibly strong. The beautiful use of metaphor, the really strong ties back to different parts of the story the band have crafted over the number of years they've been releasing the 3 albums, and even some of the EPs as well, and just the beautiful delivery of Vessel's vocals, hitting those softer notes, hitting those guttural screams that we do see on Vore. It really just gives strong testament to how strong he is as a vocalist in his ability to really draw out those emotive sides from both sides of his vocal range. It really is almost like a superpower that he's got in his ability, and he's part of the reason that this band is able to tap into so many different genres, because of his very unique voice and his ability to really play around with his tone, his range, and just everything else in between. And outside of that, the instrumental side as well is another reason this album is so strong, because of the way they perfectly build themselves around Vessel. There's only a couple of points on this album where they kind of take control of a track, maybe in the interludes and occasionally over the top of Vessel, but everything they do is crafted to really give the maximum effect, especially in tracks such as Ascensionism. Just this godlike build that we have got as kind of as Vessel ascends. It's just crazy how accurate they are able to pinpoint the sound and the emotion they want to capture at any given moment. And sometimes they do keep things super simple, and that's what helps them to bend these genres within a single song, because you're not going from one solid style just straight into another. They have ebbs and flows in their music, which really helps to show these transitions. They don't just make these sudden switches. Probably the only main one would be in The Summoning, where you have this really unexpected funk section that comes in, but the rest of them you really see it ebb and flow, and you can almost start to predict it as time goes through the album, as you kind of listen through and start to see these different styles really be brought in. So overall, I do have to give an incredible rating to this album. It's definitely a 9.5. Like, there is very few things that I can dislike on this album. I'd be really nitpicking at some of the things on that. I think it's about an album that it's definitely got to be contender for album of the year. Just the ability for the band to pull off so many styles so well. Most bands struggle to kind of bring one new style into their music, but for Sleep Token, their anonymous mass collective idea, they're building their music around a deity, enables them to really explore whatever universe they want, because it's a universe they've built for themselves. And I think that has aided them in really constructing these sounds, as well as the strength and ability of the musicians, of Vessel, as well as a vocalist. All these things just seem to work in perfect harmony for this album, and it feels like a complete story, and that's something that was missing from previous releases. Even Sundowning, it was a great collection of songs but didn't feel like an album, and I feel like they've really worked on the flaws of the past 2 albums, corrected them, and really released a masterpiece with this album. So that will be everything for today's video, but as much as I feel like it deserves all the worship it can get, I would love to know your thoughts about this particular album. Maybe you're someone who didn't enjoy it because there's too many styles being mixed in, there's not enough of metal elements in, there's too much of a softer middle portion of the album. I would love to know your thoughts. Maybe you're someone who feels like it is the best album you have probably ever heard. I really would love to know your thoughts regarding this one. And as always, if you want to see more content like this, then please do feel free to subscribe, and I will see you in the next album analysis.